The day is sometime in April 2015. I don't know exactly when, it's been a while, and I can barely remember what I ate for lunch 2 days ago, but I digress. This is when I bought Bloodborne. I was extremely hyped to play the game, as the trailers had promised this mysterious, grim, fantastical world filled of strange beasts, neat weapons, and most importantly, cool threads. I was simultaneously enamored and horrified. The previews felt like the wet dream of H.P. Lovecraft and Edgar Allan Poe, and I was Edgar Allan going to play the shit out of that game. Until I found out about how difficult it was. See, up to this point, I hadn't really played any hard games. I mean, sure, I tried Halo's campaign on Legendary, and sure, I got through a couple rounds of Cool Math Games' World's Hardest Game, but I was far from an MLG pro. Nonetheless prepared for what was in store. For context, this game was from Software. Fremin. Dune. This is actually a Dune video. Get Dune, you idiot. You probably know this if you're watching this video, but From Software games are notorious for their difficulty. I didn't know that, and I was in for a world of hurt. For context of how much I struggled, I remember spending a week, yes, a whole ass week, just navigating my way through the initial area, dying time and time again. And for those of you who don't know, hell, everyone knows how the Souls games work by now, but just for the sake of context I didn't have at the time, this meant you'd lose your experience, aka Souls, Blood Echoes, whatever you want to call them, temporarily. You could get them back, but you'd have to return to your corpse to do so. And not just that, a random enemy nearby would have your XP, and you'd have to defeat them to get them back. Little old Metric Fruit over here was so bad, he rarely achieved this, so I wasn't able to get the stat boost I desperately needed. Furthermore, when I finally made my way to the first boss, I did so poorly, I eventually gave up and had my friend beat the boss for me. Mind you, I didn't know how to summon people at the time, so rather than use the in-game mechanic that would, allow us to fight the boss at the same time, I share played my feed to my friend so he could beat the boss with my character, effectively playing as me. To make matters even more humiliating, my internet was horrible. This man's had to have beat the boss on like 5 frames per second. I am not exaggerating, it is a miracle share play ran, nonetheless my buddy clinching the dub. After that, I would continue to play the game, and while I did get better, I got like halfway through and it started to become more stressful than fun, so I dropped it. A couple months later, I would try Dark Souls 3, and while I loved the parts I played, I think I got through even less than before and gave up again. Years later, From Software's greatest creation yet drops, Elden Ring. At first, I held off because it came out during a semester and I was not going to be able to handle both simultaneously. Eventually, I stepped up to the plate for a third time though, and this time I made it way farther than I normally do. I got all the way to the mountaintop of giants, which according to several forums and my friends, I know, top tier sources here, that meant I was around 80% of the way through the game. It was also where there was a big difficulty jump that proved to be too much for me, repeating the cycle of me starting and quitting these games. Now, I get that that's really anticlimactic, but there is a point to this. Why did I keep trying these games when I knew what was probably going to happen? And why do I still look back at them as some of my favorite gaming memories? Part of it was the euphoria you got from beating tough bosses. Part of it was the fun of exploring these beautiful, mysterious worlds. But a third key component for me personally was the note system. While the Soulsborne games get a lot of well-deserved praise, I don't really see anyone talking about this feature of theirs, and I can't think of any other game that uses a similar system. So I wanted to give props where it was due. For those who don't know, the Soulsborne games let you graffiti messages to pretty much anywhere on the floor. These notes are essentially mad libs of phrases that From Software pre-selects. Combine them in any way you want to hopefully give other players hints without spoiling or ruining the experience for them. And for the most part, it works as intended. The majority of these messages are helpful and illustrate the idea of strangers helping strangers. However, sometimes you get a little bit of trolling. For example, there's a lot of illusory walls that hide passageways in these games. There's even more notes saying that certain walls are illusions, only for them not to be. This ill loser right here would fall for it every single time, all because the few occasions that ended up being true were so euphoric I was hooked. Regardless, these weren't too bad. I'd still get a chuckle out of most of them. The best notes though fell under the third category of use, comedy.
What's the deal with airplane food?
Yeah, the troll messages kind of fall under this, but I am more so referring to intended comedy, like the messages whose contents are akin to dumb jokes you tell your best friend. Notable examples being Fortnite. Why is it always mushroom? Referencing how so many hard to reach items are freaking mushrooms of all things. Or maybe something more wholesome like you are cute. Or the classic try finger butthole. Wait, that's not wholesome. That's some hole. Perhaps my favorite of the bunch though, and the one that really pushed me to keep progressing further in Elden Ring especially, were the notes pointing out all of the game's beautiful dogs. We're talking crab dogs, sleeping giant dogs, turtle pope dogs. The list goes on and on. At first, I thought it was a one-off gag. However, I slowly started to run into more and more of them until I realized it was a full-on running bit. Upon having this epiphany, I began seeking them out, and it pushed me further and further into the game. Each one served as a sort of spiritual checkpoint for me, putting a stupid big grin on my face in a setting that was otherwise depressing and cruel. Plus, altogether they reminded me that my fellow compatriots can not only stare into the face of adversity and push forward, but laugh. In its own stupid way, these notes personify the indomitable human spirit, and I love that. Furthermore, I don't really know how far I would have pushed into these games without their aid. Yeah, I showed a lot of Elden Ring specific content here, but that is mainly because its notes are the most fresh in my mind. Even though I can't remember specific ones from Bloodborne, they were still a huge comfort to me. You see, back then not only was I bad with hard games, I was bad with horror games too. Could not play them at all. Any sense of spook and Luke was gone. Yeah, the Soulsborne titles aren't horror games, but they definitely get a little eerie at times between the usually grim settings and the lack of friendly NPCs. Now, I need to really emphasize this last part here, as there are not many friendly fellows in these games. The majority of creatures you meet are trying to kill you, on top of which there is a tendency for the few friendly NPCs you meet to die as a result of you doing a side quest. As a result, you're mostly left alone in a sea of danger. In turn, the notes kind of become an invisible friend. Most times they help you out, sometimes they give you a laugh, and every once in a while they pull your leg. But regardless, you feel comfort in their presence and they push you to keep moving forward. Yet unlike your real friends, you don't know these people. They're strangers, but they still choose to help. There's something beautiful in that, and I think that series creator Hidetaka Miyazaki would agree. In one of his interviews, Miyazaki shared that his car was once trapped in snow until a group of strangers showed up and pushed him free. Like the strangers who leave these notes, both provided aid without ever talking to the person they helped. I know this inspired other mechanics in the series, like the aforementioned ally summoning system, but I can't help but feel like it shows here too. Nowadays, I feel like a lot of dialogue on gaming YouTube is negative. Hell, I kinda contributed to it myself in the last video. So I wanted to take a sec to put something more positive out there and appreciate one of my favorite mechanics in games. On that note, I want to end with one of my favorite quotes from the platform, but this time with a different intent than the original speaker.
I think I'll take my reward, and of course, thank you, Dark Souls.
Thank you for not only making one hell of a series, but for making one of the best features I've ever seen. I also love you, Donkey.